Quite unexpectedly, my garden has become my happy place. So join me today as I create a gardener's journal, and I'll even dig into a little DIY landscaping story time. Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Shada Campbell, and today I'm inviting you into my garden. It's been so beautiful here. I've been out in the yard a lot, trying to make over the garden, trying to get used to what gardening means because I'm not a natural gardener. So I have all these perennials coming up and I can't remember what half of them are. And so I thought it would be really nice to do a garden journal. So I grabbed this old travel journal that I had in the back of my desk. I think someone sent it to me in 2017. But the nice thing about a travel journal is that it has all these different inserts. So you can use it over and over. And I just grabbed a new sketchbook insert with this nice thick white paper. And that's going to be my garden journal. And I thought the first thing I want to do is record what perennials I have this year. I want to record what annuals. And then maybe I'll even do a little map of the garden. We'll just see how far we get. How about that? We're going to start with little doodles or sketches, and I'm using brush pens and colored pencils, and I want to sketch some of the perennials that I have, starting with forget-me-nots and Spanish bluebells. Looking for the June journal cover page? Head over to Patreon to get that right now. So the forget-me-nots are one of the first perennials to come up in my garden every year, and they're just like those quintessential cute little blue flowers, and to draw them, just draw the idea of a flower that a child would draw. 5 little petals in a circle, leaving the white in the middle, and then you're going to put a dot of brown in that center bit. I think my brown was a bit dark, so you could lighten that, do a lighter brown. And you're going to join everything together with some green stems, and then just frame those little flowers with some tiny leaves, and it brings the whole thing together, and you've got a really cute doodle. Let's try that Spanish bluebell. Now I'm going to draw it quite small here, so I'm just sketching some ovals using purple, and you can do a cluster of these oval shapes, and then we'll come in with the brush pen and do some thin stems, and then this big burst of long leaves at the base. And to complete it, put some of those long leaves coming forward, but make them a bit shorter. And next, we're going to draw astilbe together, which is another perennial in my garden, but it is not yet flowering, but it has a beautiful, delicate, almost lacy flower. So I like to start with kind of the frame, just the lines for the stems, and then you do all these little dots along those lines, and it just looks so delicate. And then you can come in with your green, do the branches down the center, and then just give them some little leaves at the base. And I just kind of hit that brush pen against the paper. Gives a nice natural leaf shape. We're also going to draw hydrangeas, and with very light gray, I'm kind of just sketching a little cloud. And then the thing about a white flower, a good idea is always to frame it with some green leaves or green stems, because that's going to help that white flower really jump off the page. Of course, maybe you have blue or pink hydrangeas, and you could do that kind of the same way, do a pink cloud. And then I have lilacs in my garden, lots of lilacs. They're a favorite flower of mine. And you can see I've made a cone shape, sort of with lots of little dots, maybe some tiny flower shapes. And we can do a branch and a couple little leaves, and that's our lilac. And then we're going to draw black-eyed Susans, which will not be blooming for a while, but I hope mine are going to come up. My mom gave me some last year, so hopefully I haven't killed them. But again, kind of drawing that quintessential flower, a bunch of petals, and then you can do some long straight stems and some fuzzy little leaves here, some messy little leaves we'll call them, and then use brown for the center. Now, I didn't even tell you, or I did tell you, in the supplies, I want to use colored pencil. And so that's going to help these flowers really pop off the page a little bit more. The addition of colored pencil just allows me to do a little more detail, but you could keep working with brush pen, maybe just switch to the bullet point. If you're using the Tombow markers, remember all supplies are linked in the video description. Or you could go over the details with a black fine liner. That's always a good idea, I think. Classic Shada. But what I'm doing here is outlining the bluebells. On the forget-me-nots, I just did some little lines near the stamen to give the flower a little extra detail and color. On the astilbe, I'm going to do some little squiggly curly cues to help with the texture and to give it some depth. Same thing on the lilac, little floral doodles and curly cues. And then I sort of outlined some of those black-eyed Susans. I'm keeping these doodles simple since this is a garden journal, and I have more annuals and perennials to show you, but I wanted to give you maybe a little garden tour. So this is what the garden looks like when we moved in 3 years ago. Kind of a little hairy and scary. And so what I've been doing slowly is weeding it, taking out some of the brush and putting down landscaping fabric, and then putting down mulch, and then, planting the things that I really want to see there. The thing that gets me about gardening is that you're never done. I just want it to be neat and tidy and then just put a bow on it and I'm finished. It's not like that. Last year we had the dream to build a pebble patio, very English countryside, and I found these bricks that came from an old home, and we dug out the area and filled it with pebbles, of course, and I'm so pleased with how it turned out. So things are slowly over the last 3 summers coming together, and I just thought it'd be fun to do a little garden story time. Okay, back to the journal. We're going to continue with the perennials for the year 2025. And one of the perennials that I'm hoping I will see come back is some echinacea or coneflower that I planted a little later last summer, but I think I see it coming up. And then I have tons of lily of the valley. Way too much, really. Last year I dug out a huge amount to clear a path through the garden under the pine tree. I'm quite pleased with that. But it is a beautiful flower, and right about this week is when it's blooming and it smells heavenly. It really smells amazing. Next up, I have a yellow flower in my garden. I'm actually not sure what it's called. I have to wait for it to bloom so that I can, Google image search it. But it has these really spidery thin leaves. So I'm kind of drawing those, and it looks like a tiny yellow daisy, kind of like a biden, but I guess it's a perennial. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe help me out, but you haven't seen a photo. You've only seen a doodle. Anyway, it's not blooming yet. I am also going to have a very few lilies, like an orange Canada lily. Lilies are not my favorite, not for my backyard. They look a little too wild to me, so I left a small patch. They used to be all over the place in the wild garden that was like ferns and weeds. And speaking of the wild garden, there was some bleeding heart when I moved in, so that's what I'm drawing there, and I'm kind of doing little heart shapes along a curved stem. I have planted a bit of phlox. That was another one that my mom gave me last year, so I'm seeing that begin to come back, and that'll bloom a bit later in our season. Okay, I'm going to add some detail to these guys. The lily, it's just nice to use either your bullet tip marker or your pen or pencil to do the stamen. On the phlox, you can do some more curly cues, some messy lines. Always a few lines on the leaves goes a long way. And then I am adding labels to everything. Hydrangea, astilbe, bleeding heart, lily of the valley, all my perennials for 2025, except probably a few that I forgot. And then we're going to move right along and get into those annuals. So pansies are one that I always have in pots, and you kind of begin with the Mickey Mouse ears, the 3 petals, then do the coloration, that burst of dark purple, and then you're going to put a little hint of a darker petal or 2 petals in behind. Add the yellow at the center, some sort of curling stems and fluffy leaves, and that's your pansy. And then clematis is one that Sully and I planted. He kind of plants seeds like he's like planting like burying a corpse. He's like, stay down there. So hopefully we will have clematis coming up. And they're these bright blue star-shaped flowers with big leaves. And then I have lots of alyssum, which is great for spreading kind of ground cover, and it's purples and whites. I also have nasturtiums. I have a planter where Sully and I made a big trellis last year. We worked on it together. And so I'm hoping that my nasturtiums that Sully and I planted will come up in the trellis and they will climb up. I also have a few dahlias and then some daisies. So for the daisies, I like to start with the center and just use a gray marker to do the outline. For the dahlias, you do kind of a starburst, and then it's all about adding that color with the colored pencil to kind of give these a few more details. I'm going to put my labels on there, and then it's the same kind of drill. For the alyssum, lots of curly cues and dots. For the dahlia, you can do like a starburst at the center. I did some dots at the center of the nasturtium, and that's that. I'm so pleased with the way this turned out. I think it looks fun. It was easy. It didn't take me too long. And that really makes me feel like I can continue with this and keep this journal up, because that's hard for me. If you find it hard to kind of keep up projects that you start one day, especially when it comes to creative projects or journaling projects, I'm the same way. And so what I want to do is just make sure that this feels very approachable. So I'm going to put a space for notes in here. I can write down things that I've planted, what date I've planted. And then I thought it would be nice to do a little map as well. I'm not going to get too deep into this here, but I just did a rectangle, and then I'm like doing a very basic sketch. Okay, here's the patio, here's the deck, here's the shed. My main goal with this is to have a bit of a legend on the right-hand side, and I can show where I've put what perennials so that next year I know what is coming up when everything starts to bloom or grow. Anywho, thank you so much for being here, friends. I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it, even if you're not a gardener. If you're looking for the June journal cover page, head over to Patreon and grab that, and I will see you soon with a new tutorial. Thanks for watching.